Hello, my mother works in an office and everything related to injustice at work is close to my heart. This isn't just a story for views, it's about real life experience. I want you to learn from it and not repeat other people's mistakes. All names, companies and addresses are fictional and have been changed. Now, on the topic when a person does everything perfectly and in response there is silence. Sometimes the best thing you can say is, good luck.
I was halfway through boxing up the leftover cake from the Project Wrap Party chocolate ganache, Kevin's favorite, when he tapped the side of his glass with a spoon and said, "Let's raise one for the real MVPs." My heart stupidly fluttered. I'd burned 16-hour days, skipped my anniversary dinner, even missed my niece's dance recital for that rollout. I thought, just maybe this was the moment. Then he said Tyler's name. Tyler, the guy who asked if VPN was a coding language. Everyone clapped. I stood there with plastic wrap stuck to my wrist and a fork in my back pocket, smiling like a damn prop. If you've made it this far into the story, do me a favor, tap that like button and subscribe. You wouldn't believe how many people listen to stories like this without following. It helps us more than you think. Okay, back to it. I drove home that night in silence, not even the usual rage playlist, just the sound of my blinker ticking like a slow, sarcastic metronome. I got home, kissed my husband goodnight, and opened my laptop, checked the org chart again, searched my name. Nothing. I wasn't even listed under key contributors. I opened the Slack archive, pulled up the thread where Kevin had written, "Couldn't have done this without you." That was 3 weeks ago. Then I looked up the timestamp on when the new roles were finalized. 2 days later, he knew. I'd been with the company for nearly 7 years. 7. I watched 3 full reorgs, survived 2 acquisition scares, and even volunteered to move to Kansas City for a year to fix a regional ops meltdown. I never missed a deadline. I never dropped the ball. I never asked for glory. I just showed up and made other people look competent. Kevin once told me I was the duct tape that keeps this place running. Apparently, he meant the kind they eventually peel off and toss. I didn't cry. I didn't slam anything. I just walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of wine, and emailed myself a list titled Exit Strategy. 5 bullets, no feelings, just facts. Because the one thing about being duct tape, you know exactly where the pressure points are. The Monday after the cake and knife party, I emailed HR and said I needed a few days to recenter after a high-stress delivery cycle. They approved it within the hour, probably assuming I'd come back refreshed and ready to carry the next broken system on my back. Bless their optimism. Instead, I started building my parachute. I made a pot of coffee, opened a blank Notion doc, and started mapping out the anatomy of my departure like it was a launch plan, because in a way, it was. I listed every system I was still personally shepherding, every vendor who had my cell number, every undocumented workaround I'd slipped in to prevent things from crashing during Q4 when leadership refused to approve a backup engineer. I itemized it all. By day 2, I had something that looked like a recovery plan for a tech firm post-cyber attack, except the breach was going to be my absence. I didn't want revenge, not in the petty Facebook comment war kind of way. I wanted consequence. The kind you can't yell at or guilt trip. I wanted Kevin to see exactly what he threw away, wrapped in a bow of impeccable formatting and bulletproof professionalism. I compiled a full turnover document, annotated screenshots, inline documentation links, a calendar timeline for the next 90 days with system alerts flagged in red. I even included a guide to which contractors were most likely to ghost them if they weren't handled delicately. Hint, both of them. Then came the pièce de résistance, a resignation letter so polite it could have been printed on stationery, scented like lavender and self-respect. I thanked the company. I wished the team well. I expressed gratitude for all I'd learned. And then I attached it as a PDF, digitally signed, time-stamped, and, this is key, embedded with a hyperlinked clause from my last contract amendment. Clause 7.4b, reviewed, approved, and forgotten by Kevin when I agreed to extend my role without a raise last year. Back then, I told him, I just want some protections in writing if I ever decide to pivot. He said, of course, totally reasonable, and didn't read it, which worked out just fine, because buried in that clause, Beneath the legalese and corporate glitter was a line that made my resignation bulletproof. If I left with full compliance and a documented turnover plan, any fallout after 48 hours was their responsibility, not mine. I submitted the package at 7:58 a.m. the following Monday. At 8:04, I got an email from Kevin that just said, "Wait, what?" No punctuation, no salutation. Just a man realizing he hadn't checked under the hood before revving the engine. I didn't reply. I wasn't angry anymore. I was efficient. The funny thing about legal language is that people either weaponize it or ignore it. Kevin was the latter, his eyes glazed over anytime someone said indemnified or clause. I knew that. That's why I buried the landmine there. Clause 7.4b was born in a conference room with flickering fluorescent lights and a dried-out marker I had to lick just to finish signing. Last year, when they asked me to stay another 18 months without promotion, I pushed back, softly, professionally, surgically. I didn't ask for more money. I asked for one line in my contract, that if I resigned and met every turnover requirement, they couldn't legally hang me out to dry for what came next. It was framed as a safety net. A standard clause for legacy roles. Kevin nodded like he knew what I meant, but I knew he didn't. The clause sat dormant for months, collecting digital dust, until now. When I submitted my resignation, the fuse was lit. 48 hours. That's what they had. 2 business days to either reassign everything I owned, security tokens, vendor interfaces, internal API bridges, or accept the risk. And based on the calendar invite still showing me as lead reviewer, I knew damn well they hadn't touched the thing. Kevin's first reaction was to forward my letter to legal. Classic move. They pinged back within the hour with a copy of my signed amendment, highlighted, initialed, and countersigned by Kevin himself. I can picture his face when he saw it. That twitchy little eye squint he does when he realizes he just walked into a trap set months before. He didn't say anything publicly, but the silence was telling. Normally, when someone left, there would be a fond farewell message, wishing her well on her next adventure, or forever a part of the team. Mine? Nothing. Not even a group emoji reaction. Just a vacuum where gratitude should have been. I didn't care, because I wasn't their team anymore. What made it worse, for them, was that I'd followed everything by the book. There wasn't a single corner cut. My turnover packet could have been published in Harvard Business Review. Every server credential was documented. Every open ticket flagged. Every bridge call I usually ran had calendar notes with timestamps and escalation paths. They had the blueprints. They just didn't have a builder anymore, and I didn't owe them one more brick. Kevin, I imagine, thought I'd flinch, that I'd cave and offer a few extra days just to smooth the transition, that I'd feel guilty for walking out with all those spinning plates. But that's the problem with people like Kevin. They think loyalty and dependence are the same thing. They're not. One is earned, the other is assumed. And when you assume someone will always stay, you stop planning for what happens when they don't. It took exactly 46 hours and 13 minutes. That's how long the company lasted before the first red light blinked on the dashboard. The lead security token I'd been renewing every 30 days for the last 6 years quietly expired at midnight. By 9:17 a.m., half the vendor integrations were down. The Slack channel labeled "All Status Updates" had 5 new threads and a dozen frantic messages. I wasn't there to read them, but a friend screenshotted a few for me. Is the sandbox down for anyone else? Can't access API test ENV, getting 401s. Anyone know if this is related to Redacted's handoff? No one did, because Kevin never reassigned ownership, never thought he needed to. See, the guy they were onboarding to lighten my load hadn't even cleared HR, still waiting on his background check, hadn't gotten his badge, didn't have access to the Git repo, the system vault, or the vendor dashboard. They'd booked his welcome lunch before they booked his permissions. But sure, let's pretend that's my problem now. At 10:06 a.m., Kevin emailed me with the subject line, "Quick favor?" I almost laughed. The body said, "Hey, weird question. Any chance you remember the override token for the dev environment? Looks like it might have expired." I stared at the message, not angry, just unsurprised. That was Kevin in a nutshell. Polite panic when the duct tape was gone. He probably thought quick favor would hit some nostalgic nerve in me, like I'd be flattered, like I'd still be loyal. Instead, I opened my sent folder and found the exact line I'd typed into the resignation PDF, buried on page 4 under the compliance confirmation. All credentials, override keys, and process handoffs are outlined in Appendix D per Clause 7.4b. I am not authorized to provide further support following accepted resignation. I copied it verbatim and sent it as my reply. No, hi, Kevin. No, hope this helps. Just the clause, just the rules. He didn't respond. But 2 hours later, I got a LinkedIn message from a mid-level project manager I barely knew. Hey, not sure if you've heard, but we're having a bit of a systems hiccup. Kevin says it's just a small glitch. Small glitch. That's what they always call it, until the payments stop processing or the compliance report fails or the vendor contract expires without an authorized signer. But by then, it's not a glitch. It's a mirror. And what they see in it is everything they ignored while you were still holding the place together. The call was scheduled for 11 a.m. sharp, a quarterly exec review with 2 external vendors, both of them big-ticket partners with more legal clauses than mutual trust. Kevin had been hyping it for weeks. We'll use this to lock in the next phase, he said during the last all-hands. This team is ready. By team, of course, he meant whoever hadn't quit or gone into quiet panic mode after my exit. They canceled it 12 minutes before start time. The first vendor rep, a woman named Claudia I'd worked with for 3 years, sent me a confused email after. Hey, are you okay? We heard something happened. Just wanted to check in. I didn't reply, but I knew what she was really asking. Why weren't you on the call? Where's the woman who usually runs the show while the men sip coffee and nod? What Kevin forgot, or maybe never understood, was that the contract with those vendors was built around milestone demonstrations, not optional showcases, contractual disbursement triggers, which meant that without the demo, no one got paid. And the demo clause didn't just say presented by a team member. It said presented by the designated systems architect on record. My name, my credential. No proxy. It wasn't vanity. It was architecture. I built it that way. Back when we first negotiated that deal, I insisted on accountability. They'll respect delivery if they see the person responsible, I told legal. Kevin smiled and called it a great leadership moment. Now, that clause was a landmine. Word started trickling out through the back channels. My old teammates messaged each other on personal WhatsApps trying to figure out how to override the permissions. A junior developer posted in a private Discord I'd helped them set up 2 years ago, asking if anyone knew how to boot up the demo environment. They didn't. Even if they'd gotten in, the data pipelines were half migrated. The staging tables I used for live sandbox tests were custom built, authenticated with my internal token, and timed to expire with my exit. No workaround, no reroute, no fancy screen share that could save them. I sat on my back porch that morning with my laptop open, sipping coffee as I watched their panic quietly unfold through breadcrumbs. Vendor delays, missed contract markers, muted Slack channels, and one increasingly desperate calendar invite marked urgent, review prep, alt strategy. There wasn't one. And the saddest part? None of it had to blow up. If they'd handed off my work properly, followed the docs, reassigned credentials, or even, God forbid, kept me in the room long enough to bridge the gap, that call would have happened. The vendors would have seen a sleek demo. Kevin would have taken credit. The project would have advanced. Instead, silence. They say systems don't care about feelings, but I think some do. Mine, for instance, had exactly 72 hours of patience. After that, they returned to code-based dust. Kevin always had a talent for packaging disasters in ribbon. That firm-wide email he sent? It read like a PR intern's fever dream. We thank Redacted for her many contributions and wish her continued success. As we move in an exciting new direction, we're invigorated by the opportunities ahead. No mention of why half the dev team looked like they hadn't slept since Tuesday. No hint that a multi-million-dollar vendor demo had evaporated into thin air. Just vague optimism, as if changing out a legacy architect was as casual as ordering new breakroom chairs. But Kevin forgot one crucial thing about mass emails. They invite mass replies. 3 minutes after his message went out, a back-end engineer replied all, accidentally, I assume, with a simple question. Anyone have the staging server credentials? It was followed by a junior developer chiming in, or the billing gateway access. I think it was under her SSO. The thread spiraled from there. A QA lead asked about the test automation dashboards. Someone else mentioned the expired vendor sandbox keys. Another linked to my turnover doc, but noted that half the access tickets hadn't been actioned yet by IT. Then came a quiet message from someone in finance. Do we have updated sign-off authority for the vendor disbursement queue? All visible, all time-stamped. The replies slowed after that, but the damage was done. Not technical, legal, because someone in the compliance team, God bless their clipboard souls, was monitoring for risk flags tied to open infrastructure issues. And according to Clause 7.4b, if unresolved access points or dependencies triggered post-departure disruptions, an internal indemnity report had to be filed within 10 days. The clause wasn't just CYA language, it was a flare. I imagine legal sitting in their quiet little compliance cave, sipping sad conference room coffee, reading those reply alls like breadcrumbs leading straight to Kevin's desk. They didn't need to investigate. The team had documented the failure in real time, publicly, on record. Meanwhile, I said nothing, didn't reply, didn't forward, didn't gloat. I simply flagged the thread in my personal inbox as evidence of misalignment, a little folder I kept just in case someone ever tried to spin a different version of events. You'd be amazed how often exciting new direction turns into, we're conducting a thorough post-mortem after the dust settles. And Kevin? He didn't send another company-wide message for the rest of the quarter, not even when a new hire started. Not even when another engineer quietly resigned 2 weeks later. His silence spoke louder than his subject lines ever did, because now the spotlight wasn't on me. It was on the holes I used to fill, the ones Kevin swore didn't exist. 3 days after the freeze, the panic finally breached the beige walls of procurement. I got the voicemail at 6:42 p.m. on a Friday, prime ignore everything time. It was Sarah from procurement, voice tight like she'd just walked out of a fire drill and realized the building was actually burning. Hi, we've flagged 2 outstanding deliverables as stalled and potentially exposing us to fiscal clawbacks. Could you give us a call when you're available? Translation. The money's about to vanish and we don't know where the plug is. See, those 2 deliverables were the keystones in 2 vendor contracts, each worth a mid-6-figure payout. One was a workflow integration that couldn't validate without environment access. The other was a compliance tracker that I'd architected with audit triggers built into the backend. Both systems were dormant now, and both vendors had milestone clauses that made payouts contingent on verified usage within a 10-business-day window. No access, no money. But that wasn't the part that made Kevin sweat through his dry, clean shirt. It was the letter from the vendor's legal team, issued midday Monday, that lit the real fire. If contractual obligations are not met and usage verified by KOB Monday, we will consider the agreement in breach and pursue refund under Clause 9.3b. In short, deliver or pay us back, and there was no one left to deliver. Kevin tried calling again, twice, left voicemails like we were old college friends who just needed to talk. I didn't pick up. I didn't need to, because by then, my consulting LLC had already sent a formal engagement proposal. PDF, letterhead, 3-page scope of work. Standard emergency escalation tier, $245,000 for 3 days of on-site recovery support. Non-negotiable. Pay to play. I debated making it around $250,000 just for flair, but something about $245K sounded crueler, like it had been calculated by an actuary who also knew exactly where the missing server keys were. They didn't reply right away. I didn't expect them to. Pride's a slow poison. Kevin probably spent half a day trying to work around it again, tapping junior devs, pulling favors, whispering down the management chain for anyone who might remember how she used to run the bridge calls. But no one did, because I never delegated critical failure paths to anyone, not out of ego, out of necessity. They didn't want me to train successors. They wanted me to absorb chaos so they could brag about calm delivery. And now, the only path forward was paying the very person they'd erased from the press release. I didn't need their flattery. I didn't need their apology. I'd built the systems. I'd documented the exits. And now I'd price the return. Let them decide how much forgetting me was really worth. By Thursday, the tone shifted from panic to pathetic. That's how I knew HR had finally gotten involved. I woke up to an email with the subject line, "Just a quick update." Smiley face and all, like they were trying to soften the fact that they were about to backpedal on a year's worth of neglect. Inside was a PDF with updated records from People Ops. My title, now corrected to Lead Systems Architect, retroactively effective as of last quarter, as if I was supposed to beam with pride that someone in payroll finally dragged a drop-down menu to the right line. Attached was a second document, an offer for a one-time performance retention bonus. The number was fine, not life-changing, not insulting, but hilariously timed. The kind of gesture people make when they realize the party already started without them and they're showing up with warm soda and no invitation. Then came the cherry, a press release draft, celebrating our lead systems architect. My name at the top, like an afterthought polished into marketing glitter. The whole thing read like a posthumous tribute. Bullet points of things I'd done 6 months ago. Quotes from Kevin, sanitized for professionalism. A critical part of our infrastructure journey. Her leadership kept us aligned through complex transitions. You mean the same leadership you failed to recognize while I was still in the damn building? I didn't reply to the HR thread. I forwarded it to my personal address just for the archive. Then I opened a blank email, addressed it to Kevin, CC'd HR, and attached my own PDF. It was short, professional, precise. I appreciate the gesture. Unfortunately, I've already accepted a retainer from another client, and my current scope of work does not permit outside engagements. Best of luck with the transition. Underneath the signature, I attached one image, a launch banner, bright, clean, my name, top left. Systems launch, powered by Arc Bridge Consulting. That's me now. Arc Bridge, my LLC, my rules, my schedule. The logo sat in the corner like a tattoo over scar tissue. The message sent. No read receipt came back, but I know they opened it. HR's curiosity is faster than finance, and that's when I felt it. Not pride, not victory, just a cold kind of closure, the kind that doesn't need applause. They handed me a title after they'd already made me invisible. I handed them silence wrapped in independence. Their overdue recognition wasn't a fix. It was a footnote. In someone else's chapter. The last time my old company acknowledged me was in silence. No farewell call, no legacy slideshow, not even a LinkedIn tag. But they did something better. They institutionalized the one thing they tried to ignore, the protocol I left behind. Quarterly compliance updates used to be mind-numbing spreadsheets no one read unless someone was being blamed. Now, page 6, section F. Just beneath the section on procurement audits and vendor credentialing, all turnover transitions must adhere to 7.4b Exit Compliance Protocol, a sterile sentence in black Arial tucked between boilerplate clauses and bulletproof disclaimers. No mention of where it came from, no context, no attribution, but I know. They all do. I built that clause in the quiet, while Kevin played manager of the month and HR practiced their people-first performance reviews. I drafted it on a Thursday, revised it over lunch, and slid it into my contract while legal skimmed and nodded. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud, but it was permanent. Now it outlives me. Every new hire gets it. Every exit package references it. New managers are told in onboarding sessions, make sure you review 7.4b. It's a hard requirement now. I imagine some bright-eyed lead flipping the page, thinking it's just another CYA formality, not knowing it came from a woman who left without yelling, without slamming doors, just executing a clean, perfect departure with nothing left behind except the system itself. They probably don't even realize that half of what still runs in the background came from my playbook, that the diagrams in the knowledge base still have my formatting, that the emergency escalation flowchart, still printed on the war room whiteboard, was drawn by my hand, in red Sharpie, 3 years ago. But I don't need a plaque. I don't need them to say my name, because now, when they plan an exit, they plan it around my clause. When someone threatens to leave, HR pulls up my file. Quietly, carefully. A cautionary tale with no scandal, no breach, no lawsuit, just absence, executed with surgical precision. They can revise the org chart, repaint the office, change the Slack emoji set. But they can't erase what they had to learn the hard way. Some of us don't make noise when we go. We just leave the blueprint behind.